Sometimes when you go creatively to the edge, that can be a very good thing. You push boundaries, you push the envelope, and you do things and achieve things that you never even dreamed possible. Then sometimes when you do go to that extreme, you go too far and you kind of lose sight of things, and it just becomes one big scramble, one big ginormous clusterfuck. And when I look at WrestleMania 16, this is another largely forgettable show, very similar to WrestleMania 15. But WrestleMania 16, or as it was also known as WrestleMania 2000, just comes across to me as one of the most disorganized, jumbled clusterfucks in the history of WrestleMania and in the history, perhaps, of WWF/WWE pay-per-views. I think there was only one match, if I remember correctly, one match on this entire card that was one person versus another person. And that was a fucking cat fight. Everything else was either a tag team match or a huge kind of free-for-all match or a four-way or just a three-way, a bunch of trash on this show. And you would think, going back and looking at an era that was so good and so important and made so much money for the WWF, you would have expected all the WrestleManias during this time frame from like 98 to 2002 to be spot on, be on the money, and be terrific WrestleMania feeling shows. But that's just simply not the case. And that is definitely not the case with WrestleMania 2000. Oh, and to think just a few years before you had WrestleMania at the Pond, and it was a good show. Oh, not this time. That 96 show, WrestleMania 12, kind of showed you sometimes it's good to be kind of simplistic. This show was anything but. I know Russo was long gone from the company, but this seems like, when you go and look at the pay-per-view, this looks like the brainchild of a Vince Russo. This has so many elements involved, it's ridiculous. Now, it started off interesting enough to me. Big Boss Man and Bull Buchanan versus The Godfather and D'Lo Brown in a tag match. You got Ice-T coming out with the Godfather's hose. He's wrapping him down to the ring, and that's all fine and good. And then the match happens. Chugga, 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 toot-toot. It's time, once again, for everybody to get aboard the hoe train. Unfortunately, that's the only real highlight of this match, and we will move on. Now, at this time, the WWF still had the Hardcore Championship, and they were doing interesting things with the interesting match stipulations, 24/7 rules, all of this other crap. But then you get this Hardcore Battle Royal, and it was a lot of fun in theory to watch. But what stands out to most to me about this is the incredibly botched finish. You have to see it to believe it. The wrestlers were confused. Clearly, the referee was confused. The commentators were confused. And I think every single person that has ever watched this event ultimately has been confused by it. Who won? Who lost? Did that last pinfall get in on time or not? We don't know. I guess nobody ever cared. All the different pinfalls that happened and everything during this. It was just kind of, like I said, a jumbled, colossal clusterfuck. And I understand, at the time that you had an incredibly deep, talented roster, and you were trying to get everybody on the WrestleMania card. I understand that, and I can appreciate that, but goddamn, son. Goddamn. This was ridiculous. Then you got TNA taking on Head Cheese. Oh, God. Chester McCheesington. Let's go, Head Cheese! The best part of this match is being able to see Trish Stratus back when she had both boobs and ass and she was blonde. 3 things to really love about her. And then some of the rumors about her and Lillian liking go, that may be the 4th reason to really like her. Anyways, hopefully she got some of Lillian's pubes out of her teeth. Anyways, I'm on fire today. These are the type of things that a WrestleMania 16 evokes out of you, because this was not a good show. Not a good show. A gigantic, ginormous clusterfuck of a show. Unfortunately, what gets lost sometimes is the greatness of one of the matches on this card. This is an example of where it wasn't a clusterfuck, and it was a really, really good match that set the table, ironically, for an even better match the next year at WrestleMania 17. And that was the Triangle Ladder match for the WWF Tag Team Championships between Edge and Christian, the Dudley Boyz, and the Hardys. These 3 tag teams here during this time made the tag team division of the WWF must-see television. And must-see pay-per-view. These guys were outstanding. They were pushing boundaries. They were doing all types of ridiculous stuff, stealing shows, having great matches, making themselves stars. Outstanding match here. Now, everybody always talks about WrestleMania 17 and that TLC match and the epic match that it was. Yes, it was. But this triangle ladder match here is no slouch and should take a backseat to nobody because this was a really damn good match. I always found it funny, too, how Edge and Christian seem to find a way to win these damn matches. Remember, at one point in time, Edge had a pretty nice WrestleMania win streak going on? Just saying. I always thought, couldn't you throw the Hardy Boys a frickin' bone here, the Dudley Boys a frickin' bone here? That's when I knew back then that even though you could argue that the Hardys were getting a bigger reaction, Jeff Hardy was maybe getting the biggest reaction of all and doing the most crazy shit, that Edge was viewed as the biggest future star by the company because they always seem to win these big damn matches. Just saying. Then we get to the one single match on this card, and that is the cat fight between Terry Runnels and the Cat. Why couldn't we just have the Fabulous Moolah and Mae Young have the cat fight themselves? That would have been so much better. Now, I get that Val Venus was involved here. Hello, ladies. The big Val Boski here. And while WrestleMania comes once a year, the big Val Boski comes each and every single night. And the ladies go, woo! And the guys go, that's fucking awesome. The best part of this was seeing Moolah, was seeing Mae Young and Val Venus. That's all you need to know. You had a 6-person intergender tag team match. Too Cool in China against the Radicals. And, this kind of storyline really revolved around China and Eddie Guerrero. And that was actually a fun storyline back then. And that was good. But again, another example of a forgettable match that had too many people, had too many fucking things going on. And that's just the way it was. And even when you get to the next match, this triple threat match, it's a 2-fall triple threat match where both Kurt Angle's European and Intercontinental Championships are on the line. You have Benoit, you have Jericho, you have Angle. And you would expect this to be outstanding. But it really just ends up coming across as a match that could have been so much more. Maybe you could have had Angle actually have 2 matches on the card. Maybe you would say Angle versus Jericho to kick off the show for one belt, and then Angle and Benoit to kick off or for the other belt later on in the show. Because you got all 3 of them here. And then Benoit wins the first fall. He wins the IC title. But then there's still a match. It's like there's absolutely no, and I emphasize again, no time to pause and absorb and soak in the moment. No time to actually follow up on anything because you go from Benoit's winning the IC title to, who gives a shit? There's still the European title to win. This was stupid on so many different levels. In a match in theory that seems okay, but it was, again, this concept was fucking stupid, like so many things involving WrestleMania 2000. You had a tag team match, again, imagine that on this card. Rikishi and Kane taking on X-Pac and Road Dogg. Yeah, let's move on. And then we get to the main event. And this was a history-setting main event because this is the first time in WWF history that a heel champion went into WrestleMania the champ and left the champ. And wouldn't you know, it was Triple H. Praise God! He's a history maker, a trendsetter, a pioneer. But even when you get to here, you have so many different options for what you could have done on this card with this match. And this ultimately, really, to me, represented that it was all about the McMahons. Vince had a guy, Steph had a guy, Linda had a guy, Shane had a guy. It was all about the McMahons. There's a McMahon in every fucking corner. Am I supposed to pay attention to this? Is the belt more important? Are these guys more important? Or are the fucking McMahons more important? With all the story that you had between Triple H and Mick Foley, and Mick Foley had been retired at No Way Out. Then he's coming right back and he's main eventing WrestleMania 16, getting a shot at the title. Like what he did the previous 2 pay-per-views, the Rumble and No Way Out against Triple H, was inconsequential and meant nothing. The whole thing of Big Show and The Rock and the controversy at the 2000 Royal Rumble. Who actually won? Whose feet touched first? Oh, who gives a fuck? Yeah, The Rock won the Rumble. We don't give a damn. Let's throw Big Show in the fucking match, too. This was dumb. This whole match was stupid. It truly was. If you were going to sit there and do anything, you couldn't have at least had Foley win the fucking belt. Or, God forbid, you actually had Rock win the fucking belt here. But no, we had to pound Triple H down your fucking throats and have Vince McMahon whack Rock a couple of times with a freaking chair so that way he could turn heel, because that's what everybody fucking wanted. And Triple H leaves with the title. Oh, God. This main event, as you go back and watch it, just to me, represents how sometimes during the Attitude Era, an era that so many people love to kiss the ass of, and understandably so, because a lot of great things happened, it also reminded you how many train wreck elements there were to this company at this time. And it reminded you how sometimes they would go too far and they would go too much and they would do too much, and it would just confuse the hell out of you, and you would never really establish anything, and the show would ultimately suck. And that's definitely the case here with WrestleMania 16. Now, the more interesting debate, I suppose, is in the Attitude Era, which WrestleMania was worse, WrestleMania 15 or WrestleMania 16? If you want to debate that in the comments, go ahead. I think you could make a very strong argument for either one of them. Again, such a great era in WWF/WWE history, and yet two of the colossal stinkfest, forgettable WrestleManias of all time happened during the Attitude Era, during the heart of the Attitude Era, WrestleMania 15, 1999, which was the biggest year of business in the WWF's history. And 2000, still a very solid year, clearly kicking the ass of WCW. And this is the type of shit they gave you for WrestleMania 16. It was McMahon versus McMahon versus McMahon versus McMahon, and that represents everything in a nutshell. It truly does. This is one of those shows, if you want to know what you should go back and watch, pretty much go watch the Triangle Ladder match, and maybe, for some sentimentality's sake, if you so desire, go watch the 2-fall triple threat match. But I even think that's skippable. The main event is fucking skippable. Most everything else is skippable. And by and large, this show is skippable. Don't kid yourself. But oh boy, the next WrestleMania review is one of my favorite reviews to do every time I do it. One of my favorite discussions to have all the time. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of heat. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of shit. Good. I hope so, because I won't hold back. You'll find out next how I feel about WrestleMania 17. Oh, boy.